Hey, this is Paul Lathrop from the Polite Society Podcast, reminding you that this podcast is a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network. Check out all the other great podcasts on the network at selfdefenseradio.net.
Welcome to Unload and Show Clear, the podcast about all things IDPA. And now, here's your host, living proof that without practice, there's no limit to how little you can accomplish, Lloyd Bailey.
Welcome to another episode of Unload and Show Clear. This is a podcast about the men and women who compete in IDPA, International Defensive Pistol Association. Now, I've been attending IDPA matches since 2011, and over the years, I've met some really amazing people thanks to this sport. Ignore all the colorful jerseys and the sponsor logos, and underneath you're going to find everyday men and women who volunteer their time and their effort and spend their hard-earned dollars on travel, match fees, and gear to make this sport great. And today you're going to meet another one of these awesome people. But first, I want to thank today's sponsor. So you got a gun and your concealed carry permit. Now you need a holster, and not just any holster. You need a holster that is custom made for your gun, one that provides secure retention and which is comfortable for you to wear all day long. What I want you to do is check out our friends at Hog Holsters, HAWG holsters.com. Veteran owned and operated, Hog Holsters offers a custom line of inside the waistband holsters, sheaths, and magazine carriers in multiple colors and mounting options for the most popular handgun models. They're fully adjustable for cant and ride height, and they're handmade in the great state of Arizona using all American parts. Every part from the kydex right down to the screws is made right here in the USA. Get a quality handmade holster, great customer service, free shipping on every order, and you can save 10% off your order of $30 or more when you use the promo code USC10 at checkout. HogHolsters.com, HAWG holsters, helping America wear guns. HogHolsters.com. Our special guest today is Chad Cheung from Northridge, California. Chad, welcome to the show.
Hey, Lloyd. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. Tell us a little about yourself. Tell us what you do for a living there in Northridge.
My primary job, how I make a living, is I'm a project manager for a small software company.
Okay. What are you originally from California, born and raised, or where are you from originally?
Yeah, I've been pretty much in California my whole life. I grew up probably I think 40 miles or so, outside of Los Angeles, and then in my later teens, I moved another 10 miles, so into the city of Los Angeles. So I haven't made it very far. Or if anything, law-wise, you'd probably say I digress some.
So, living behind enemy lines, as I like to say, all your life,
for sure.
Where did the interest in guns come from? How were you introduced to them by your parents, or did you have guns in the home as a kid, or is this an interest that you developed as you got older?
Growing up, my dad always had them. So I kind of always, in our house, we always had them. We didn't go shooting or hunting a lot, but we went some, as a child.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I was one of those, out of high school, I joined the Army, and I served 8 years. So, and then pretty much after that, I went to college, and it just kind of I'd always had them. They've always been a part of my life. Guns, you always had a gun in your home.
Gotcha.
So when I got my own home, it didn't, that was when I turned 18, I made sure that I got a rifle. When I turned 21, I made sure that I got a handgun.
Sort of a rite of passage.
I don't want to go that far, but it was just part of life. I just had them around all the time.
Well,
and
thank you for your service, by the way.
Oh, thanks. It surprises me when I talk to people and they say "Oh, I don't have a gun in the house." I'm like, "Really?" It's like a way of life for me.
What was that first? What was the first rifle that you bought for yourself, and what was the first handgun?
It was a Mini 14, and I still have it today. Yeah,
nice.
That was the first rifle, and it was actually I conned my mom into buying it for me for my 18th birthday. Yeah. And then my first handgun, I kind of went all out. I got an H&K USP compact in 40. Yeah. I was like, go big or go home. So.
Right. So after that, how did you get interested in competitive shooting? Where did that interest come from?
So, I guess like by my nature, I've always been competitive. So I compete like in everything, even if it's just like friends and stuff like that. So I think I think a lot of shooting competitors are like that. We're just competitive by nature. And then I was talking with, I think, one of my managers at work who saw me like maybe make a comment about something else. And he mentioned that he had a neighbor that shot rifles competitively, and that he introduced the two of us. And he talked me into coming out to an NRA high power match.
Oh.
So that was my first like introduction to competitive shooting. And that was pretty much like the start of it for me. I shot a high power service rifle probably for about a year and a half exclusively.
Oh, cool. So shooting rifle exclusively in competition for a year, how did you transition to handgun? How were you introduced to action pistol?
Yeah, I think I was at like we have a forum that's for California called calguns.net. It's pretty big out here. And they do like get-togethers. So we kind of got together at a local range, indoor range, like once a month, and we just shot recreationally. And then, somebody said, hey, you should come out. And, I was talking about rifles probably. And they said, hey, you should come out and you should try pistols someday. And he mentioned like IDPA. And to be very honest, I was like really intimidated. I'm like, oh, I don't think I'm ready for that. Yeah. And then, he went and then he posted some pictures and he talked about it and said it was pretty easygoing and relaxed. So I think maybe like 2 or 3 weeks later for the next club match, I made it out there. And it was just like you said. I mean, as soon as you saw it, like once, you're like, oh, I'm going to go to my car and get my stuff and we're going to make this happen,
What do you remember of that first, the first local match that you competed in?
I remember that they paired me, the club was really friendly. They paired me up with a guy that's been shooting a while. And he took me to the side and made sure I could draw my gun without killing myself. Just some basic, just basic safety stuff. He's all, you've never done it before. Let me just make sure you watch. He's all, you're going to be fine. We went it was a small match. I think it's only like 4 or 5 stages. We went and he kind of showed me and he kind of explained it a little bit. And that was really kind of it. I remember it was the first time I ever saw a swinging target, I think. Yeah, maybe other than like TV.
Right.
But it was really, I'd say it was really relaxed and everybody was really friendly. And, if you told the safety officer that you were new, they were very helpful and stuff. So it was very like, it wasn't intimidating by any means. It was very friendly and inviting almost, you would say.
So did you get the bug at that point? Was it like, oh, I really want to get good at this? Or was it still kind of a hobby? Yeah, I'll show up and do that from time to time. At what point did you get hooked?
So I think, at that first match, I was pretty much, I would say I was hooked. I don't know if I would say I got serious about the competitive stuff though, like right away for about a year or so. I would just, go to my local match and I would shoot locally with competitors, and they had their own like little ranking system with like awards and stuff like that. So you were kind of like competitive in that like a little arena until I think a few of us got together and were like, hey, there was a regional match, I think, coming up, and we should go and, play the real game kind of thing.
Do you remember what match that was and where, and what do you remember of that first sanctioned match experience?
So, yeah, it was, I don't remember what year it was. I'd have to think about it. It's probably like 7 or 8 years ago, but it was a regional, I think it was the Central California Regional Championship. And it was in Winton, California, which is it's in Merced, like halfway, maybe just outside of Yosemite.
Okay.
Maybe 50 miles or something, but it's in like the middle of California. Mm-hmm. And I remember that it was like 103 degrees. But I remember it was just so hot that it was really just miserable.
A little different from what you were used to.
Definitely different than from what I was used to. Although, it gets hot. It gets hot in LA too, but it was pretty sweltering.
It was a different kind of hot.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're just outside a lot longer. It's like an all-day thing versus,
Oh,
we were able
yes.
to, at least at our local club match, it was only, you could get there. If you got there at 8 o'clock, you could leave by 12. It was open squatting. So they moved pretty quickly.
What have you done since then? How have you're an expert in multiple divisions now. You've even become the coordinator for the state of California, so you've gotten even more involved on the sort of behind the scenes side of it. How did all of that take place? How did what happened from that first regional match to today, where you are involved at the level that you are and at the skill level that you are?
So, I think it was probably like that first regional match is where it is after just experiencing like what the game was like at that level, it's so much different than it is at the club level.
Right.
That it's just like, I want to play it there because that's where the game is really played.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of like, you just go in like this search for knowledge, and you start soaking up like everything that you can, especially like all the rules and the different techniques and stuff like that. And then I had a lot of fun, I think, for a couple of years. I think when I first classified, even going into the first match, I was the sharpshooter. And I had a lot of fun as a sharpshooter, shooting competitively at the regional, state, national level. It was fine. It's a lot of fun. You generally, if you practice somewhat, you can do really well as a sharpshooter. What I found, you laugh, but I'm serious. I think and if you actually look at the statistics, the sharpshooters is really where kind of like is where all the competition is. And that's where when I say competition, it's where the most amount of people are. And then it kind of, as you go out towards the experts and the masters, it really kind of thins its way out. And you kind of really, if you have to look at the matches and you can kind of see what divisions, be it like ESP or SSP, those are usually the two biggest,
mm-hmm.
which is going to have the bigger field between the two. And you can kind of decide maybe what kind of gun you want to shoot. Because like I said, I'm really competitive, so I want to shoot where the most competition is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, and then what I found is that I think I got bumped from SSP sharpshooter to SSP expert at the Carolina Cup. It had to be like 3 or 4 years ago. Yeah, it was the last time they just sanctioned it again last year, but before that, it was when there was the huge controversy.
Right.
Yeah. I was there for that. And that was it was a field of like, I think, I don't remember, I'd have to go look it up, but it was a lot, maybe 40, 45 sharpshooters or something like that. And I came in second, which gave me the bump to expert. And then I switched to
wait a second. Before we move on to that, you were there at that match, and you got a bump at that match. What do you remember, before we move on to the rest of your shooting career, what do you remember about that day as you participated in it? What was it like? What was going on? How was your day?
Okay, so the Carolina Cups, it was in North Carolina at this range called The Range. It was run by Paula and Frank Glover, who'd been in IDPA for a long time.
Yep.
So it was my first time at that range, shooting that match, but I shot other major matches before that.
Right.
But so one of the things I was really surprised about was that just the level of the match, or the effort that went into it. I would say it was very much a national level match. It was really like, you felt like you were at nationals, or you were at the indoor nationals when they had that, where you saw all the big players there. It was really big. I'm trying to remember. I think it was maybe like 15 or 16 stages, and you shot it over 2 days. It was, again, it was super hot, probably 100 plus degrees and like 90% humidity. Yeah. Because I think, if I recall correctly, it's in July or August is when they hold that match.
Yep. That's North Carolina for you.
Yeah. And the Carolinas are pretty bad in the middle of the summer. What really blew me away, I think, was really, like I said, the effort that went into it. They had this one stage that I remember that was, it was like a library, and they had the like library aisles set up, and there were books like lining all the shelves. And I mean, it looked like a library, and it wasn't just that one stage though. It was like every stage was just like, from the set dressing and the scenario would just like blow you away on what it looked like. I had a really good squad. I didn't know anybody because I came from California. So I made some friends that were from Florida. Everybody was really nice and helpful. I just kind of kept it together that day. I really focused hard, did my stage planning and stuff ahead of time. There was one stage, that library stage I told you before, I kind of went for it, and I shouldn't have. But I'm like, hey, I flew all the way over here. I'm gonna give it my all, and I'm gonna try and do the faster route. And it just didn't work out for me, but I didn't mess it up enough so that I was still able to come out pretty good.
Right.
I've gotten plaques from a number of matches, and I would probably say that that's one of my, like, if you ask me which one I felt that I earned the most, I would definitely say it was that one.
Yeah, I don't remember what year it was where they filmed it and they put it on a DVD and sent it out to new members, and you were shooting from, digging your own grave and shooting out of the back of a car and all kinds of crazy stuff. And I was like, when I saw that, I said, I have got to do this sport, whatever it is, I've got to do it. This is so cool.
Yeah. I mean, the stages were just like you said, like top notch. I mean, I don't think I've ever been to some of the matches, to another match that's been that good. At least like how they set up the stages, where they're just like, you're like in a house, or you're right. Like really there. There's hallways and there's doors and there's props.
All right. So what's the like we kind of joked about you being behind enemy lines, but I've talked to a couple of other California shooters, and there's a misconception, as I think Ben Hart told me, there's a misconception that nobody in California has guns. Give people an idea what the shooting scene is like, the competitive shooting scene, particularly for California, and because I think it's very different from the sort of the misconception that people have about California. Yeah,
and it's actually I totally understand. I think where that perception comes from, because I don't understand it either. It's like we are one of the most regulated states. Yet we have one of the highest, in my opinion, like I'd say we have the highest active competitive shooting sports scenes like around, especially in Southern California. And then like in the Bay Area, there's a really big club up there. If you're willing to drive in Southern California, when I say drive, and within an hour to 2 hours, you can shoot a match every weekend. Yeah, and then it's really I'd say the saddest part is about, like, you guys hear about all the crazy stuff that's happening over here when it comes to guns and ammunition and stuff. Is that competitive shooting was really born out here, with Mike Dalton and Nicky Fowler and Taryn Butler and all those guys from way back when that shot at the Southwest Pistol League in Piru, California, where they still have a range there today.
Right. Let's get back to your personal shooting career here. Are you still? I gather that the HKUSP didn't last very long in competition.
Yeah, and actually we kind of jumped around a little bit. Like, I bought one gun, I bought some more. I think when I started shooting IDPA, I was actually shooting a Glock 23, which is also in 40, but it's a compact Glock.
What's your favorite today?
So I shoot a Glock 35, which is also in 40, which is the competition version of, I guess, called Glock's competition pistol, which is, right. It has almost a 6-inch barrel, I think, or 6.1 inches, 0.01 inches. I shoot 40, which a lot of people don't shoot probably because of the recoil, but I do. I will say that I shoot 40 minor. I like how the steel falls and just how it impacts steel a little bit harder than some of the 9mm rounds. That said, I probably do sacrifice a little bit of probably like speed in my follow-ups, because even 40 minor is not gonna be softer than like 9mm minor.
Right. But you get bigger holes in the paper, so you get those close calls near the perfs go your way a little more often.
They do, but they also when they're on the non-threats, they could go the other way as well. So
that's true.
It's kind of a balance.
Yep. Oh, don't I know that? All right. So you have not heard the show before, so I don't have to set this up. I have a little segment that at the end here that just some fun either or questions. I call it Pick Your Poison. And basically, I'm going to give you some either or scenarios, and you give me which of the two you prefer and why. All right. So
Okay.
the first one that I always ask, and I get varying answers on this one, and I'm always interested to hear how people kind of justify their position on this one. You're at a major match like the Western or like Carolina Cup, and you've got a standard stage, and it's not one of those, warm-up stages like they're starting to do more of nowadays. It's a regular standards. Do you shoot standards if you had a choice of shooting at the first stage of the match or the last? Which would you choose?
Definitely the first,
Okay.
I would say.
Why is that?
In my opinion, they're just a little bit, generally it's a standard stage. So it's testing just plain accuracy or the fundamentals of the sport.
Mm-hmm.
Usually it's like typically multiple strings, just stand and deliver. So there's not, it's more accuracy based. There's not a whole lot of stage planning, so to speak. And people are probably going to get upset if you say something like that, but generally it's not as complicated. There's not as much stuff going on.
Right.
That you can easily get distracted by. So if it's like first thing, to me, if it's first thing in the morning, you're still going to be fresh. Although, it could ruin your day, especially if you have you had a non-threat or you have misses or something like that.
Right.
Especially since they moved it out. I think now the maximum is 40 yards.
Mm-hmm.
And now, so I mean, if you had to make a 40-yard shot on a shot on a partial, the first thing in the morning, that could be rough. That could be a rough day. That could be a rough day for you.
It would be for me, I can tell you.
Yeah, I mean, but that's why they do publish. Hopefully, a good match will publish the stages ahead of time. And I know that I think it was last year or the year before at the Western, they had a 40-yard shot on the standards. They weren't partials, but you knew that was going to be there. So the week before the match, you put targets out at 40 yards, and you shot at them until you made sure that you knew what it was going to take.
Yep.
To make the hits.
All right.
So yeah. So for me, I think first thing in the morning, it's just easier to do standards and not have to. I don't want to say not have to think, but it's just there's just not as much going on, so you don't have to. Yeah, I'm not going to get around not thinking, but you understand what I mean.
Yep. So here's another one that I get varying answers on, and a lot of it depends on your age. Wide open stage with no hard cover, no partials, no non-threats, but everything's at like 20 to 25 yards, or lots of non-threats and hard cover and partial targets, and everything's inside of 10. Which would you prefer?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think so if I was to see it at a sanctioned match, I would say I'd want to see the farther shots. I would prefer that.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe at a club level match, I would say, the closer targets with the partials, just because it's a little bit funner to shoot, in my opinion.
Right. And it doesn't cost you as much if you nick a non-threat.
Yeah. Well, yeah, hopefully that doesn't happen. But I think a lot of people struggle with speed. Just the raw mechanics of being able to pull the trigger as fast as you possibly can when you need to.
Mm-hmm.
And then slowing down when you need to. So I always, at least it's a struggle for me. So when I practice, I like to practice those types of things.
Right.
But a lot of people don't practice, in my opinion. I mean, when I say a lot of people, the vast majority of sharpshooters or marksmen, I want to say that they don't practice at 25 yards.
Right.
So if you're trying to win a match, you'll want to see farther targets, because it's really going to separate the people that can shoot distance versus the people that can't.
Right. Okay.
So as a competitor, I would say I'd want to shoot the stage that has more open targets that are further away, because I know not everybody's practicing 25-yard shots.
Mm-hmm.
Versus it'll be, although there's it's just really how fast can you run and how fast can you pull the trigger at the closer targets.
Right.
I just think it's a little, what I want to see at a sanctioned match, it's just a little bit harder,
mm-hmm.
Or it really kind of separates the people that have their fundamentals down really good,
right.
versus the people that don't.
Okay. All right, you're an expert in CCP, ESP, SSP, bug, and PCC. If you could only shoot one of them for an entire year, which would it be?
So I've been doing that actually, and I've only been shooting ESP, I think, for the last year and a half now. I did it all last year. I did it all last year, and I'm doing it all this year.
Okay. All right. So throw out ESP, the one you've been doing for the last year. Which of the others do you like the most? Which of the others would you be most comfortable shooting an entire year?
So I think the easiest transition, that's a good question. The easiest transition might be to CCP because it's essentially ESP rules, just a smaller gun.
Right.
Then again, if you go to SSP, you're just taking away your magwell, maybe your aftermarket barrel or something.
Right.
And then it's the same size gun. But the magwell can really help with mag changes. I'd say the easier transition would be CCP.
Yep.
But you know what would drive? I'm actually going to say I'd go to SSP because what would drive me away from CCP is, at least in California, is that there's just not enough competition.
Oh, okay.
So I mean, yeah, I think I shot maybe 2 years ago. I shot nothing but CCP, and it's great. You get a lot of plaques, but you're the only guy shooting. you're the only expert, or you're the only master, and or it wasn't. I'm like, that's great. You have a lot of stuff that you can hang on the wall. I mean, that's my opinion, but like I said, I want to be where the competition is. So I mean, it's just not as fun. Yeah, I got first place, but yeah,
but there was nobody
people.
Else, right?
yeah. So there was really nobody else there to shoot with. So I'd probably go to SSP because ESP, SSP is, and that's really kind of I think why I've been shooting ESP is they tend to be where the most competition is. Those two divisions.
Yep. Here's one that came to mind, a question that came to mind because of something you answered earlier. You've probably seen this stage scenario before. I like to call it the hold my beer stage, where you come to a point of cover and you're faced with a steel popper that activates a disappearing target. Maybe it's a drop turner, maybe it's an in and out, maybe it's a pop-up. But at the same time, you've got maybe one or two paper targets that you might be able to engage and then go back to the paper or to the disappearing target. Some people will play that safe and they'll shoot the steel and wait. Others will say, hey, hold my beer. I'm going to make this happen. What is your approach to that kind of a stage?
I think a lot of it has to do with how my match was going prior to that stage. So first I would say if we're at a club match, I would go for it for sure. Because there's nothing, I'm not going to lose anything if I mess it up there. In my opinion, I'm not going to, and it's good experience. But, part of me, like I'd have to see it and see how fast it was going. If I really thought there was enough time, I'd watch other people do it, see if they went for it. I mean, I tend to say, I want to say I would do it. I would go for it because that's really, if you can, especially if you're going to save like 2 or 3 seconds, I mean, that's huge. Mm-hmm. And if you're the only one so imagine if it saves 2 or 3 seconds and you're the only one in your class that does it and you pull it off, I mean, you're going to be 2 or 3 seconds ahead of the field. So it's definitely worth it if you are confident that you can pull it off. So I would say my first inclination would be I would say hold my beer and I would go for it. If I'd really been shooting like crap though, the entire day, I probably might play it safe. If there was somebody else on, if it was like the last stage of the day and I know I've been doing pretty good, that's going to be I think that's harder if it's your last stage and you've been shooting a good match and this could just like ruin it for you.
Right.
Then it would really be like, do I think I have enough of a lead that I could play this safe and still win? Or do I really need to go for it?
Right.
It's all strategy, man. You're making these hard questions.
Yep. Well, that's the idea. All right. At this point, what do you think, what part of your game is your biggest strength? And which part of your game would you say needs the most improvement?
Yeah, that's a good question. One of my biggest strengths is that I can shoot long distances fairly accurately. I shoot a lot of GSSF matches, which is really a lot of like almost like bullseye type shooting.
right.
when it's compared to action pistol. And they have, one of the stages has targets at 25 yards.
Right.
I generally think when I see a 25-yard target on a standard stage, it doesn't bother me a bit. I'm like, oh, I can, I know exactly what I need to do to make that happen.
Right.
Probably like my weakest strength is probably going to be like weekend headshots or something like that. It's just something that you don't practice a lot. Although I want to say that, yes, I listened to some other podcasts. I don't know if you know who Steve Anderson is, but Steve Anderson totally says you should, every time you practice, you need to practice with your weak hand.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been trying to incorporate that. Every time I shoot my gun, I try to shoot it at least, like a magazine or 2 magazines or something with my weak hand. So definitely probably shooting with my weak hand. Definitely headshots. For some reason, I find them intimidating for whatever reason.
All right. So as we wrap things up here, the final question is always, what is it about IDPA that you love so much? What is it about this game that keeps you coming back and keeps you doing it? There are other sports, there are other shooting sports that you could move on to. They're more of a pure shooting challenge, and you got your start with long range rifle. What is it about IDPA that you really love?
It's probably what people hate the most. I like kind of the rules. I'm very like a black or white kind of person, where like either there's no gray area. Either it's this or it's that. And the rules are kind of like that. Although some people would argue there's open to interpretation, but generally, more, I'd say more so than not that the rules are like that. I've shot, like you said, I've shot USPSA, which are the other sports. I've shot some 3-gun and stuff, and they're just different. I think they're good in their own way. They definitely help you progress in their own way. But I think IDPA is where I kind of started. So I kind of have this like nostalgic, connection to it, where I just, I enjoy the matches very much so. I enjoy shooting USPSA matches very much so as well. It's a different game. It's got different rules. And when you're there, you got to put that hat on and say, hey, this is what I'm doing today,
Chad, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really do appreciate you taking the time to do this. I know you're busy and you have no idea who I am, but I appreciate you doing this nonetheless. I really enjoyed chatting with you, and I hope I get a chance to run across you on the range at some point.
Yeah, that'd be great. We have some good matches out here in California. I really appreciate it. No, I had a good time. Thanks a lot, Lloyd.
All right, that's all the time we have for today. I want to thank our guest for coming on the show and our sponsors for making all of this possible. Take a moment, if you would, to check out the website, check out our show notes at unloadpodcast.com. We've got lots of interviews with more amazing guests like the one you heard today. Join our Facebook group at unloadpodcast.com/Facebook for all the latest updates and to connect with other fans of the show. And if you'd like to support the show, we sure would appreciate it. Consider becoming a patron at unloadpodcast.com/extra. I've got some full-length interviews and special content available there exclusively for patrons as well. And if you know somebody or you yourself would make an interesting guest for a future episode of Unload and Show Clear, please contact me at lloyd@unloadpodcast.com or click on the contact page on the website and send us a message. We'd love to hear from you. Tune in again next time for another episode of Unload and Show Clear.